Sergei Guriev, Spin Dictators, The Changing Face of Tyranny in the 21st Century. In Spin Dictators, The Changing Face of Tyranny in the 21st Century, author Sergei Guriev examines the evolution of autocratic regimes, shifting from conventional fear dictatorships to a new breed, spin dictatorships. The book explores the use of fear, repression, and violence by autocrats in the past, noting the transformation of contemporary dictators who manipulate and deceive to gain popularity and the illusion of democracy. Dive into the rich analysis of past and present techniques employed by such leaders, from media restrictions to global interactions, and discover how the world can resist the influence of spin dictatorships.
The evolution of democracy. Full democracy is a recent historical phenomenon. Until 1900, most political systems were monarchies, oligarchies, or colonies managed by foreign powers. In the 20th century, democracy spread in three waves, resulting in more than half of the world's countries becoming electoral democracies by 2015. However, dictatorships still exist, and the first two waves of liberalism resulted in varying degrees of backpedaling to autocracy. The Two Faces of Autocracy. Autocracy has taken a new form, and it now primarily exists in two modes. The first is old-fashioned fear dictatorships, which use tactics such as oppressive violence, menacing rhetoric, restricted freedom of the press, and isolation of citizens. These dictators transform society by crushing resistance and quickly mobilizing their supporters. The second form is spin dictatorships, which can be technocratic or populist, left or right, individual or dominant party-led. These leaders are popular with citizens and manufacture their popularity through subtle media manipulation, policies to boost the economy, and less restrictive engagement with other countries. They exert absolute power over their nations while cultivating an image of democracy that allows for some opposition parties and public critique. Some, like China's, are hybrids, blending spin with fear tactics. Though this phenomenon is not entirely new, this book analyzes the new paradigm and illustrates the methods by which autocracies avoid intimidating citizens into submission. Evolution of fear-based governance. Fear regimes that used violence to retain absolute power evolved to plausible deniability tactics that include outsourcing and surveillance. Governments throughout history have used violence and fear as a way to gain and retain power. In the 20th century, Stalin, Hitler, Maoist China, and populist Argentina were known for their authoritarian regimes' deadly shadows. These governments utilized martial language and dress, militarized the citizenry, and used violence to suppress or discourage resistance. Fear tactics were also used to gain support from citizens by making them complicit in crimes. However, beginning in the 1960s, tactics started to shift from violence to prosecution on trumped-up criminal charges, shorter jail terms, and torture without leaving visible marks. These governments outsourced violence to loyal citizen groups, gained plausible deniability, and used technology for surveillance and harassment rather than broadcasting brutality. Data shows that the numbers of killings, political prisoners, and accusations of torture have dropped off dramatically since the 1980s. The central point of fear-based governance was to become and remain popular by purging perceived others and toughening the remaining population in the service of absolute power. While this tactic has largely disappeared, it is worth noting that fear-based governance has evolved to include outsourcing and surveillance as well to maintain power, albeit via less visible means. The evolution of propaganda. In the past, propaganda in dictatorships was simple and forceful. Today, spin dictatorships use a combination of historical references, imagery, and relatable messaging to appeal to a wider audience. Rather than relying on cults of personality, these leaders cultivate celebrity appeal. Propaganda can now be found in unexpected places, including entertainment programs and social media. Governments even employ trolls to spread propaganda online. This modern approach to propaganda makes it harder to detect and can be more effective. Surprisingly, a comparative analysis shows that the rhetoric of spin dictators is more similar to that of democratic leaders than fear dictators. The evolution of media control. In the past, censorship was a common tool used by dictators to control media, with public book burnings and assaults on journalists and their families being just some of the ways. However, spin dictators have now realized that a lighter touch is more effective. They discredit journalists, drown out unflattering news, and use bribes, legal recourse, onerous regulations, sensationalist distractions, paper shortages and other obstacles to control the media. These tactics are also used in democracies, but due to strong institutions, history of democratic norms, and a comparatively informed citizenry, it is harder to get away with at scale. Media restrictions now need to be unobtrusive for a leader's popularity to be boosted. The Deceptive Democracy. Elections as a tool for spin dictators. Elections have been a popular tool for dictators to consolidate their power. Unlike old-school fear dictators, spin dictators use elections to gain popularity and manipulate public opinion. They may even revise election results to support the illusion of real competition. Data shows that the number of elections held each year has been rising since the 1820s, including multi-party elections. Spin dictators monitor their image and public opinion during elections to test the effectiveness of their manipulation efforts. Gerrymandering and malapportionment are on the rise globally. These risky tricks are employed by spin dictators to maintain their power, demoralize opponents, or to guarantee enough vote majorities. Ironically, fraud in elections may enhance credibility for spin dictators. Minor fraud may escape scrutiny because many people believe that fraud is common in democracies. Many observers question why spin dictators use these tactics when they are already so popular among the public. Regardless of the reasons, the use of elections as a tool for deception and manipulation continues to increase globally, posing a threat to genuine democracy. Fear and spin dictators. Fear dictators view foreign nations as either threats or opportunities for territorial or ideological expansion. They tend to wage war on opponents, fight proxy wars, or aid terrorists and keep strict rules on media access. In contrast, spin dictators are more open to interactions with foreign nations, engage in less direct conflict, and may participate in international events to boost support for their regimes. They accept foreign aid, hire foreign consultants, and court public support abroad through various means. Furthermore, spin dictators lend money to influential elites or fringe groups to strengthen their legitimacy. The decline of dictatorships. The worldwide trend towards democracy encouraged by globalization, modernization, and societal shifts has made traditional methods of autocratic rule irrelevant. While some fear and spin dictators have found workarounds, alternatives to liberal democracy are not popular, making the collapse of the liberal international order and deglobalization unlikely. Globalization, modernization, and societal changes have given rise to a post-Cold War liberal international order that favors democratic ideals. Autocratic mobilization is no longer relevant in a global economy driven by creativity, ideas, innovation, and digitalization. As nations seek to create value and remain competitive, educated workers shape priorities towards freedom of thought, quality of life, and self-expression. Censorship has become impractical while the sanctions and aid of foreign nations help keep many autocrats in check. Dictators who use spin tactics, such as Putin turning to China for foreign aid instead of Western sanctions, are non-ideological and opportunistic. Fear dictators cling to power by corrupting leaders, eroding liberal democracy, and weakening Western alliances and institutions. Despite the recent wave of populism, alternatives to liberal democracy like the Chinese model are not popular. Hence, the liberal international order and deglobalization are unlikely to collapse. Instead, traditional methods of autocratic rule are fading away as the world moves towards democratic ideals. 5 ways to resist spin dictatorships. The West can resist spin dictatorships by engaging them adversarially, supporting economic modernization, investing in counterintelligence and cybersecurity, becoming a paragon of democratic virtue, and supporting institutions of the liberal world order. By doing so, dictators will be unable to discredit Western efforts and co-opt their strategies. Military intervention should be avoided, and instead, democracy should be encouraged democratically.
Guriev's A Spin Dictators, The Changing Face of Tyranny in the 21st Century, presents an insightful study of the way autocratic rule has evolved, transitioning from dictators employing fear and violence to those using spin and deception to dominate their nations. The reader is left with a thorough understanding of how autocrats manipulate masses, media, and global politics. The book also provides hope, highlighting several ways the West can resist the influence of spin dictatorships, including supporting economic modernization, investing in counterintelligence and cybersecurity, enhancing democratic institutions and practices, strengthening the liberal world order, and encouraging democracy through non-military means.